Hey guys, today I'll show you a horror thriller movie named The Boogeyman. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins with a family immersed in sorrow. The two girls couldn't come to terms with their mother's sudden death, causing Sadie and her younger sister Sawyer to become rather melancholic. Their psychologist father, Harper, was too occupied with work to attend to his daughter's emotional needs. However, after a month of adjustment, the sisters were ready to return to school. Sadie donned her mother's dress, a personal way to keep her memory alive. Harper didn't say much when he saw this. He understood his children's reluctance to let go since he was also struggling to accept his wife's absence. But as their father, he had to put on a brave face and care for his daughters. With their father's watchful eyes on them, Sadie put on her headphones and walked into the school gate. Classmates offered their condolences non-stop, but she just wanted to pretend she didn't hear them and walk away quickly. When she finally reached her locker, she discovered a lunch from a month ago. The food had already spoiled, emitting a nauseating smell. Before Sadie could throw the rotten food away, a blonde friend approached her. The blonde wasn't very polite, which led Sadie to argue with her. Unexpectedly, the blonde girl lashed out and accidentally burst the garbage in Sadie's hand. The rotten food splattered onto her mother's dress. Distressed, Sadie fled the school, not caring that it was the first day back. All she wanted was to go home and clean the dress. Meanwhile, a stranger visited Harper's office. The man hadn't made an appointment, and Harper usually wouldn't entertain such visitors. But seeing the man's anxious and frightened look, Harper decided to make an exception. He invited the man to sit in his office, and the man requested that he close the wardrobe in the corner. After Harper did as he was told, he took out his recorder and began to question the man. The man used to be a father of 3 children. However, since his newborn passed away, the rest of his children also died one after another. Prior to their death, his eldest daughter had repeatedly claimed that there was a monster in their wardrobe at home. At that time, nobody took it seriously until all the children met with their unfortunate fate. This story sounded outrageous, and Harper's first reaction was that the man in front of him was the culprit. Therefore, he made an excuse to leave and secretly dialed the police. At this moment, Sadie returned home. She tossed her dress into the washing machine and was just about to return to her room when she heard footsteps echoing in the corridor. Assuming it was her father, she followed the sound. As she passed her mother's art studio, she noticed a pool of red liquid seeping from beneath the door. Terrified, Sadie fell to the ground. However, upon realizing it was paint, she pushed the studio door open. The room was in total disarray. A muffled groan echoed from the wardrobe in the corner. Sadie gripped the craft knife in her hand and charged towards the wardrobe. Upon hearing the commotion, her father hurried over. He switched on the wardrobe light, and the sight that greeted them was unforgettable. The strange man was hanging from the door, already dead. The house was swiftly encircled by arriving police cars and ambulances. Sadie, still in shock, sat on the stairs. Sawyer, who had just returned from school, flung herself into Sadie's arms. Their father, Harper, was being questioned by the police. He gave a full account of what had happened, including the mention of a monster by the deceased man. The police dismissed it as nonsense, but Sadie began to harbor doubts, as she had heard sounds of a struggle coming from the wardrobe. The police explained it was likely the unconscious struggles of the dying man, which seemed plausible, and this explanation dispelled Sadie's doubts. However, the day's events left the younger daughter feeling scared. Only after Harper had checked all corners of the room did she finally close her eyes in relief. But not long after he left, scratching noises could be heard from the wardrobe. Startled awake, Sawyer saw a corner of the carpet mysteriously lifted as if something was hiding under the bed. She leaned over to check, holding her nightlight, when suddenly a ghostly face appeared. Terrified, she fell off the bed and ran straight for her sister's room. At that moment, Sadie was attempting a seance, hoping to speak with their mother. Unfortunately, the ritual was not successful. Seeing Sawyer with traces of blood at the corner of her mouth, Sadie realized it was the loose tooth that had refused to fall out. She tied a cotton thread around the tooth, attaching the other end to a door handle. But before her sister was ready, Sadie accidentally slammed the door shut. Even she hadn't expected that. Seeing Sawyer crying, Sadie held her close and comforted her, humming a familiar lullaby. Gradually, Sawyer calmed down and they both fell asleep on the bed. However, under the bed in the pitch black, a strange, raspy humming could be heard, and the fallen tooth started to move on its own along the door crack. Following their father's advice, Sadie sought help from a psychologist. The doctor, however, thought that Sawyer's condition was more serious. To convince the girls that monsters do not exist, the doctor drew the curtains in the office, plunging the room into darkness. A desk lamp in the center of the room cast a dull red glow. Under the doctor's control, the light began to flicker. All Sawyer had to do was relax during this time, but as the light fluctuated, she gripped her sister in fear, claiming to see the monster in the corner. She screamed uncontrollably. The psychologist informed Harper and included the mention of the monster. But Harper, like the doctor, believed it was her imagination. Sadie, however, saw her sister's reaction and linked it to the appearance of the dead man. She searched the man's name online and found a happy group photo. In the meantime, Sawyer hid under the blanket. Holding her nightlight, she dared not sleep. She then heard her sister's voice coming from afar and felt someone sit on her bed. She lifted the blanket, only to find no one around. At this moment, Sadie was rummaging through their father's workspace. She replayed the audio file from earlier in the day. As soon as she heard the man's mention of the so-called monster, she discovered a crumpled notebook hidden under the sofa. One page was violently torn out. To decipher what was drawn on it, Sadie shaded the page with a pencil. Slowly, an image of a grotesque, malformed creature appeared. Startled by a scream on the audio, Sadie accidentally dropped the recorder into the water. Fortunately, the device wasn't damaged. Just as she was about to return to her room, out of the corner of her eye, she noticed a change on the ceiling. Black lines resembling blood vessels were gradually extending to the walls. Sawyer also rushed into the kitchen in fear, saying that she had experienced a series of strange events. She ventured into the hallway, hearing sounds echoing from the distant darkness. She tossed the lamp towards the far end, only to see the light swallowed by the void at the end of the corridor. Sawyer saw a painting on the ground. A monster was depicted on it. To understand what had frightened her sister, Sadie called a friend after school the next day and decided to go to the stranger's house to investigate. The house where the man once lived was now a wreck, not resembling a home at all. Disappointed, she was about to leave when a flash of light lit up the corner. She quickly stepped into the room where a central spotlight was flickering due to a poor connection. She restored the power, and the blinding light instantly illuminated a wardrobe in front. She observed black vines covering the corner, spreading down from the second floor like veins. Out of curiosity, Sadie went upstairs and found the corridor filled with white candles. One room was filled with many photos. As she approached, she was caught by a Polaroid. A blinding flash passed, a photo paper was spit out, and there was someone behind her. The woman, with messy hair and a shotgun in her hands, was the last owner of the house. After hearing the girl's explanation, she started to talk about the misfortunes of her house. Seeing that the girl didn't believe her bullshit, the woman warned her that the monster hid in the darkness and to beware when the darkness comes. As she was speaking, she pointed the gun at the girl, claiming the monster was right behind her. She did not hesitate to shoot. The woman's aim was precise, but Sadie was still frightened. She returned home, still shaken, while Sawyer followed, asking what had happened. The sound of urgent knocking echoed from the door. Feeling annoyed, Sadie stood behind the door, about to send her sister away, when suddenly the door was kicked down. Fortunately, it was only a nightmare. Before she could calm down, she heard noises from her mother's painting studio. Her father was packing things up. Harper believed that the girls were grieving too much and were having frequent hallucinations. He planned to throw away all of his wife's mementos, something Sadie strongly opposed. After much persuasion, the items were moved to the basement. After everything was settled, she took out her mother's lighter, trying to connect with her mother's spirit, but the flames showed no response. Just as she was about to lose hope, Sadie heard her mother's voice behind her. She turned around to look at the video camera she had just seen, but it hadn't been turned on. She quickly followed the sound, only to see a familiar figure standing in the darkness. Believing it's her mother, she couldn't help but reach out her hand, but as the lights turned on, the figure turned out to be a dress hanging on the rack, as if the previous scene was merely a delusion. The confusion from last night left her feeling uneasy all day, so her friend decided to accompany her through this difficult time. Upon learning that Sadie's friends were coming over, Harper specifically instructed Sawyer not to disturb them. However, Sadie's friends quickly grew bored. Not wanting to be party poopers, Sadie brought out half a roll of cigarettes she had found in the studio. The friends began to share it around, but Sadie was choked by the strong smoke. Amid the laughter, she was coughing violently. Sadie felt something in her throat, so she rushed into the bathroom to investigate. To her surprise, she pulled a tooth from deep within her throat. Looking at the familiar object, Sadie felt dizzy. The blonde friend wanted to check out the problematic wardrobe. Not wanting to refuse, Sadie led everyone upstairs. At this point, the black marks on the wall had started to spread. In a moment of distraction for Sadie, the blonde girl locked her in the studio. Trapped in the darkness, Sadie had a bad feeling. She was pounding on the door and an unpleasant roar echoed around her. A fleeting shadow frightened her. Just as the monster was rushing towards her, she threw herself at the door. Just then, the door opened and Sadie fell harshly into the light, the monster behind her disappearing. But the fear lingered, and she angrily slapped the blonde girl. Everyone left in a huff. Sawyer, who had been playing a game, watched everyone leave. The living room was instantly plunged into dead silence. Suddenly, a shadow flashed in the corner. Using the faint light from the television, Sawyer saw the monster's face. She was so scared that she lay on the sofa, not daring to make a sound. But the monster crept up to her, constantly calling her name. Sawyer held her breath, not daring to respond. She thought the monster would leave as before, but then something unexpected happened. The loud crashing noise attracted the father and sister. They quickly took Sawyer to the hospital. Fortunately, she was all right, but the girl was greatly shocked. Sadie quickly comforted her sister, saying that she had also seen the monster. Now she believed everything was real. But their father still did not believe this story, even thinking that Sadie was hallucinating due to drug use. Helplessly, Sadie could only try to deal with the monster herself. She had just received a call from the woman who claimed to have found a way to deal with the monster. Upon hearing this, Sadie returned to the house without hesitation. The woman was still holding her shotgun, and there were even more candles in the corridor. She had also set up numerous traps in the room. Everything was ready except for the right moment. Before Sadie knew it, she was tied up by the woman. It turned out that the woman's plan required bait. As the lights went out, the monster's voice immediately echoed from the end of the corridor. It called to Sadie, slowly appearing. Wherever it went, candles were extinguished. In the darkness, its eerie eyes stood out. Gunshots rang out one after another, and the monster actually fell to the ground, wounded. Black blood began to spread. The woman quickly moved to finish it off with another shot. Seeing the monster lying motionless, they both breathed a sigh of relief. But to their surprise, the monster was not dead. It attacked the defenseless woman and then rushed towards Sadie. Sadie rolled and crawled downstairs. The moment she crawled into the light, the monster retreated back into the darkness. It seemed that the monster wouldn't easily be killed by bullets. Just as Sadie was in despair, her father's call made her tense. Hearing that Harper was preparing to bring Sawyer home, she quickly raised her voice to stop him. Although the father obediently stopped at the door, he was still pulled into the darkness by a great force. In a desperate rush, Sadie hurried back home. By this time, all the lights in the house had been damaged. Sawyer had managed to evade the monster's attack by hiding in the glow of a string of light bulbs. However, Harper had been seized by the creature and taken to the basement. The sisters mustered their courage to search for their father, only to see the monstrous dark figure looming on the wall. The unconscious Harper was suspended mid-air. The monster shifted its target immediately upon seeing the sisters. It was incredibly powerful, toppling a wooden rack onto the girls. In an effort to protect her sister, Sadie was captured by the monster. Just as it seemed Sadie's life was about to be sucked away, Harper picked up a wooden stake and stabbed it into the creature. Although this interrupted the attack, it also sent him flying like a Barbie toy. In the ensuing chaos, Sawyer accidentally yanked the wire from the string of light bulbs, plunging the basement into darkness. At their moment of panic, Harper from afar produced his wife's lighter. The warm flame banished a portion of the darkness. Sadie and Sawyer quickly moved to support their father, but their only source of light was gradually dying out. As the monster roared like a goose and advanced towards the trio, the lighter suddenly erupted into a fierce flame, scaring the creature back. Sawyer passed a spray paint can to Sadie, which, when used with the lighter, repelled the monster further. It seemed to fear the fire even more than the spray. However, just at the crucial moment, the spray malfunctioned. Thankfully, Sawyer timely splashed a bottle of strong liquor. Sadie immediately caught on and threw the lighter at the monster. The flames swallowed its grotesque skeleton in an instant. The fire spread along the black veins on the wall, and the sisters hastily carried their father out of the flaming house. Before leaving, Sadie glanced back at her mother's belongings, but this time she let go completely. During the fight, a flame that had shifted to the left convinced Sadie that her mother was always by her side. With the monster gone, the family was finally able to open up to each other. Harper had never imagined his daughters could be so brave, giving him the courage to face life. But as they were about to leave, Sadie was stopped by the psychiatrist. She turned back to the office. It was empty, and the corner wardrobe suddenly opened. Sadie anxiously stared into the darkness behind the door. The psychiatrist then emerged from the office, asking perplexedly why Sadie hadn't left. It seemed the monster had returned to the darkness. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.